This is one of 5 bonus episodes of the Zero Cafe podcast that are recorded live at the 2021 edition of the conference formerly known as Conversion Hotel, which was held on the lovely island of Texel in the Netherlands. Theme of this session is a user research Qual versus Quant, and my guests in the cafe are Els Aerts, a user research evangelist and better known as the A in AG Consult, and Rianne van der Rijt, a UX researcher at Ray-Ban and Oakley. The Zero Cafe podcast is made possible by Klaviyo, VWO and the Online Influence Institute, and of course a big thanks to Tom Wesseling and the rest of the organization for having us at their conference. I'm gonna try. Try to contain Els a bit, so we won't have a full half-hour rant about how things are going. But first off, Rianne, could you introduce yourself to us?
Yes, my name is Rianne in Dutch. So I'm a UX researcher for brands like Ray-Ban and Oakley within the eyewear industry.
Hi, I'm Els, and when I don't go on rants, I'm the co-founder of AG Consult, a Belgian optimization agency.
And when you do go on rants?
I go hard. I won't lie, I go hard, yes.
So, let's dive in right away then. What's your opinion on qualitative versus quantitative research for websites / zero?
Well,
you're already turning red.
Fire! Well, I'll just get comfortable. I don't like the versus word there. It should be and I'm
That's
sure.
The same. Yeah, I was going to say.
There you go. I have a feeling that Rianne
we're on the same team, so it's a double round in the end.
Yeah. So no, you need both, and I think it's very important to know when to use which method. And I see a lot of things going wrong there. Because it can be dangerous trying to ask questions that need to be answered in a quantitative way in qualitative research, and vice versa.
So let's do a small audience poll, right, on what kind of research methods everyone's using. So of course you can ask your questions later on, so prepare those. But in terms of user research that you do, who uses Google Analytics as a source of, let's start easy. Who's doing one-on-one interviews with clients? Okay, who's doing eye tracking? Who's doing MRI scans?
Stop.
Who's doing surveys? Okay.
I love this crowd. You've gathered a great group of people here, Guido.
Well, I didn't, Tom did, so...
I would like to add maybe another one.
Yeah.
Who does unmoderated testing? A few.
Yeah. 4 or 5-ish. Okay, so what do we think about that distribution that we see here? So you like it? So why?
I think I'm quite happy to see. I mean, obviously, I was expecting everybody's hands to go up with analytics. It would be quite weird if that had not happened. But I think there's a lot more hands going up, or there were a lot more hands going up for individual interviews than there would have been a few years back. So I'm quite happy to see that qualitative research is getting, the recognition that it deserves, and that people really see the, pun intended, quality of doing that.
Yeah, well, it's a bit preaching to a choir here, of course, in this audience. There might be a different situation if you ask different people in companies, product owners in general or something. But okay. Rianne, happy to see this, or?
Yeah, and I would like to know how in-depth the research will be in those live interviews, because it's good that it's happening, but at what point in the process are you doing these interviews?
Sure. Anyone that wants to comment on that? How deep do you go with your...
I recently visited some of my customers who had used the service, and it's typically older women, average customers like 65-year-old women, and actually went to visit them in their home and asked them how they felt around the service. And it's only in person that you can notice some tears in their eyes when they're talking about what led them to using the service, something you never get from a survey, and it's, I think, sparked a hell of a lot more of just going in their homes. It's their first, 6 years in, first time I've sat in front of a customer.
Yeah, and Els, you also mentioned up front, you don't have to research everything. So what's an issue you see there? So are there a lot of people that just want to do everything and go overboard there? That seems a bit like the other extreme, right? We're trying to promote doing research, and then we're finally doing it, and then you start complaining about people. Yeah, now you're going overboard.
I'm a very difficult woman. Yes, no. The thing is, and I think my name tag says research evangelist, and I'm very happy with that. But sometimes I feel like there's people say, "Oh, we'll have to research that." I'm like, no, actually that particular thing we do not have to research, because there is such a thing as expertise, and there is such a thing as, UX guidelines that have been around for a long, long time and that really, really do work. The problem is knowing exactly what those are. And I see that a lot of the common practices are mistaken for best practices, when really,
It's also the implementation, right? Because knowing the practices and the common practices is one thing. Implementing it in a way that is effective and will lead you to the best qualitative insights is another thing.
Yeah.
So where do you see things going wrong?
Well, sometimes I see A/B tests where basically the control, the A.
Take a deep breath.
I know. is just a UI that never should have happened in the first place. And then the variation, the B, just follows the UX guideline that has been around for forever and is, surprise, surprise, a winner. Of course it's going to be a winner.
I heard a quote from Elon Musk, and maybe it's not his quote, I don't know, but he said the most common problem of a very experienced engineer is that they're optimizing for something that shouldn't be there in the first place. That's something that we should apply then, or?
I'm not sure what that means. Maybe that's because I don't like Elon Musk.
Sure, that's fine.
No, what I really mean is like you shouldn't question the absolute fundamentals. And I like to compare it with if you're designing a car, I don't think you'll give it a second's thought as to, which pedal needs to come where, brake, gas, and, clutch. This is a no-brainer. Don't go like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if we put the other one on the right? Yeah, it wouldn't be. So this is something. There's a lot of, and that's the point. There's so many things to be creative with when you're designing a car. There's so many things to be creative with when you're designing a digital product, and there are some things that you do not need to get creative with. You actually have a wonderful set of rules that people intuitively know. Like when you're designing a door, if you design the door handle wrong, people are gonna, start pulling it instead of pushing it, etc. Affordance.
Yeah, but then how do we know, or how do we figure out what are those basics? What are those basics? Who decides what's the basic?
The principles, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, that's knowledge that you can gather from theory, from education, from visiting keynote lectures here, for example. And I don't necessarily know that you don't need talent to follow these. It's if you know the rules, you can break them if you choose to. But it's study them.
Okay. Do we already have some audience questions on how to do research? And I expect we have a very high barrier of, you willing to stand up and ask Else a question? But anyone willing?
I never bite before 4.
Only 2 hours left.
Hurry.
Yeah. How do you when you start with clients that are doing digital stuff already, so they're there, they have Google Analytics installed, they want to make the service better. Where do you start with doing user research? What kind of research do you start with? And I mean, let's assume they don't start with A/B testing. I hope they don't start there. Where do we start? How do we figure out what the problem is?
Yeah, first you try to define what is the thing that you see happening in the data, so the Google Analytics. Do you see certain friction points or pain points? And you start to basically question yourself and the team, like, okay, what are the things that we want to do research on? Shall we start with doing a discovery research on the target audience and start there? Or do you want to segment first and see what different user types are discovering on the website? And we usually start with a discovery test, and then we do a deep dive into certain topics. But I joined the team, the CRO team in my company, when they already did full-fledged A/B tests, and then I came in to, we need to take care of this quality part as well, so let's hire a UX researcher to fix that for us, instead of already having thought of a method to implement the UX and the A/B testing side. So I'm also curious to hear this from you, Els.
Question before, were they just running out of ideas or something, or what happened?
They were trying to validate things like, if we move the button, or very basic. The majority of CRO and A/B tests in the company was quite low, in essence. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you need the qualitative research. Preferably also combined with the knowledge of the guidelines to really, one, you need the qualitative research to find out why something is happening, and then you need the knowledge of the guidelines to create the better variation, to create the treatment version.
Versions.
Or versions, I totally agree with Rianne. You start with finding out what is really the problem, and depending on how you build your roadmap, is it OKR based? Is it whatever? How free can you, as an agency, be, or how hard do you have to sort of comply to the client? Where are the biggest opportunities? And then try and see what is the minimum amount of research that we need to do? What is the method that is the cheapest to find out why this is a problem? Like, you could see something happening in analytics, and you don't necessarily need to throw 2 days of user testing at this. You might just have to look at 3 session recordings. And also knowing which method to prioritize, and being, I like to be economical with funds and time. This is also why we optimize. And then sort of put that in your planning, because for some problems you might say, we really need to do user testing for this. And both your research and the planning of your A/B tests should work together, so that you can do maybe low-hanging fruit A/B tests first, have those running while you do your deeper research, so you can get your input for your tests that are a bit more complicated, or just require more input directly from interviews or user testing.
Yeah. To me, it's always surprising how big of a hurdle companies expect user testing to be. Well, for me, it's relatively easy. It's very low barrier entry. Especially when compared to the results. I mean, if you look at Google Analytics, I mean, there's a lot of reports you can look at, and you still have no idea why things are happening. And it's so much easier just to interview people, or do a survey, or whatever, collect that qualitative data, and then infer some things from that.
Yeah, I think it's because the analytics data is there. That's it. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to free up budget. You don't have to free up time. So it's just there. Whether it's actually correct or not, that's another question. But very few people ask themselves that, because you can just log in and you can look at numbers. They're also big numbers. People love looking at big numbers. There's a false sense of security in the big numbers. And then when you say, we will learn so much from just watching 6 people or 10 people, they're like, If you ask those 10 people the right things, then you will get amazing insights. You shouldn't ask them things that you need 100, 500 people for. That's very dangerous. I sometimes get that as well. But can't we, while we have them in for user testing, can't you just ask them whether they would like feature X, Y, or Z? And I'm like, we would be asking 10 people. This would mean nothing. Even if 8 out of those 10 people said yes, this would mean nothing. And it would be very, very dangerous because you would hear, 8 out of 10 people like this. We'll build this.
And is it actually a user need, or is it something that they say they like, but in the end their behavior doesn't say the same thing, so you still will be implementing the wrong thing? Yeah.
Yeah, just entering yes because it's an awkward situation. You're asking, we built this. We really like it. Do you want us to build it?
Yeah, the way of asking definitely plays a huge part. So much in qualitative depends on, one, the questions you ask or the tasks you set, and the way in which you ask them. That alone can invalidate any answer that comes or any action that you observe.
Or even the question you ask next. So what happens if you ask one question, try and navigate them through a prototype, and the follow-up question is contradicting that, or they already have seen the page, and then everything can get contaminated in a sense. That's the biggest learning curve that I took from starting in UX research, is not only what questions to ask, but how to ask them and what will be the most logical order in asking those questions.
And it's still hard to interpret those results, right? I mean, I've been to a lot of user studies where people are really struggling, and then you ask them, okay, how would you score this experience? And 8. Really? You didn't even reach your goal.
And that's why I don't like asking those questions, because as an agency, I usually have a client sitting on the other end listening in.
Yep.
And so they see these people struggle, like, struggle. And indeed, at the end, you ask them, 8. And I go like, it was fine. We don't need to change anything. No, they're lying. And also, because they want to be sort of forgiving for you.
Yep.
So I prefer not to ask them those questions, actually, because it can send a very confusing message to people who don't realize that, users lie.
A lot of the time. And that's it's a big downside that you need to be aware of when doing those interviews, right? It's informative, but you also need to be very aware of all those social limitations that you have by performing an interview.
You have such a thing as the magic wand question, and I intensely hate that. I don't know if you have the same thing, that you ask the users, okay, what if you had a magic wand? What would you change on this site? This question should be scrapped from every guideline research book or whatever.
Yeah, because that's not at all why we do research. No. You as an expert should be the one who knows what goes into the magic wand. You're the one who needs to build that magic wand. The user the user only has to basically show you what their need is, what their problem is, and what's happening on your digital product or your website.
And if they can handle your magic wand. This is going in a weird direction.
And actually, no. And if they can, you took it there. There. But I think if they can handle your magic wand, that's the sort of, I would call that the A/B test.
Yeah.
Did I say it one time too often? Okay, sorry. Rihanna is at fault here. She brought it up.
We have a question.
I think it's very nice to hear all those questions you don't want to ask, but if you would, give us help us to ask those very right questions. What kind of questions would you really ask? What kind of format would you recommend? To help those out and help those fallacies out of the way.
And then specifically for those one-on-one interviews.
Especially for those one-on-one interviews, because we all know that marketing can get very weird conclusions, or can drop very weird conclusions out of things you also saw, and then you think, how do you come up with that?
Yeah. No, good question.
Yeah, and I usually try to start with, for example, if I do research on how people search for eyeglasses online, I try to create a mindset with the user of like, how do you normally start this search? without having even showed them the prototype or the product or website that I'm testing, just to gather a sense of like, okay, imagine yourself in this scenario, and then start from there. First, I'll ask them a few questions, and then I'll direct them to the prototype, first letting them navigate and see how they naturally would search and through the website. And then when they come to certain points on the topics that I want to research, I'll start asking them follow-up questions. So this is basically the approach I tend to take in general, yeah.
Yeah, same. If it's with an existing product, it's really interesting to sort of first hark back to a customer's previous experience, or something. Oh, I like these glasses. How long have you had them for? Oh, 3 years. Oh, where did you buy them? What's important to a little learner? Or have you visited this website before? Yeah. I what did you look for? I looked for this and that. Oh. Did you find it? It was actually kind of hard. Okay, maybe we could start by looking for that again. And then uppakay, you sort of, the very English uppakay. And then you have shown, and this is very important, you have to actually really be interested in what this person is telling you, and not just thinking, okay, well, what was my first
script?
Yeah, this is my script. I need to get this done. I only have so many minutes. Number 1, number 2, number 3. No, you're there to really, get to know how this person, thinks, how this person approaches this particular product or project, or really how they approach that problem.
How do you introduce yourself as a researcher at the beginning of the interview?
Well, I usually say my name. I have a whole starter script. I like to sort of create a bit of a rapport. I don't want to be too distant. I want people to feel comfortable. So I'll ask them, nice weather. Actually, never nice weather in Belgium, but raining again, or how was traffic, etc. Now, working from home.
Is that in the script? Like, just
yada.
Question.
Yeah. So, no. So, when Sunny do this, panic. No, but you want to establish a sort of human-to-human connection first before you dive into, when. A big no-no, I think, is to mention the word research. I always say, we're here to have a chat, and even if I'm never the one who makes the prototype anymore. But even back in the days when I would totally lie and say that I hadn't, because otherwise that person might think that they can offend you in some way, or that they can say something to please you. So it's very important to stress that you are a neutral. That you're neutral, and that nothing they can say can upset you or can flatter you.
I also prefer to go to a location that doesn't have the brand of whatever website.
While that can be intimidating, I have heard people say really, really nasty things in some really, really big offices. So if something is bad, it doesn't hold people back. But you're right. I prefer a neutral location. Yeah.
And that's curious that you say that, because I mostly do research for Oakley and Ray-Ban, and the first thing people then tend to say, oh, I love Ray-Bans. And I mean, it's not about the brand. We're trying to get insights on the website and the navigation and how you perceive that. But some people just tend to ramble on. I own 3 pairs of these sunglasses, and I go on ski holidays with my Oakley sunglasses. And that sometimes I feel like, okay, maybe we should just remove the logo or put a mock-up.
Go to a remote location that doesn't have the brand, and just start. You're an independent researcher, or not researcher. You're an independent person
with a magic wand.
With a magic wand, and just start in Google and say, okay, we're going to look for sunglasses. Don't even mention the brand, and hopefully they end up at your brand, or otherwise after 10 minutes you can just gently
nudge the conversation to a different topic.
We have an audience question.
Hi, thank you. My question relates to something that maybe a lot of us have experienced, and it's like dealing with magic pill seekers, quick fix seekers, people that want optimization, to tell you, hey, make this great, but we don't need any research, just give us the ideas. These kind of people. And what are your best strategies, or what persuasive strategies you might have found to be most effective to convert them into research believers, or to get them committed to trying it out and seeing the benefits without rejecting it straight out because they just think you can come up with super duper good ideas from top of mind because you're an expert in the field and don't need any
You're
research.
the user expert, right? So
Sorry?
You are the user expert.
Yeah,
so tell us.
exactly. You're the CEO person. You got the ideas. How do you get through to these people, and how do you convert them? That's basically like the What
Good
are your
question.
strategies
Thanks.
for that?
Yeah.
That's a very interesting question, because it's also something that I've been struggling with myself. And what I try to do, I just try to stick my foot in the door into like, I know you want to take this approach, but let's interview some people. And usually I just ask one or two participants in interviews and gather a few snippets of insights, and I shove it to them in their mailbox or chat. Like, just have a look at this before you go into that presentation where you display all these new things and ideas. And over the course of the last few months, I've noticed that people then get back to me and they say like, okay, yeah, those few insights were quite interesting, so maybe we should have a look more and do a deep dive in this before the next session. So it's small steps, and I try to break this into smaller steps, because I noticed in general that most of those meetings are controlled by people that have the biggest mouth, the hippos, that we learned yesterday. And it's very hard to then come up with like, oh yeah, we can do user interviews, but it takes time. And I try to be innovative in this sense. So by asking questions and just do some research initially, that's how I try to solve this problem, so to say.
Yeah, I would agree. Basically, baby steps. Mm-hmm. So start small. Don't go all in with this is our wonderful XK research plan.
Half an hour recordings and watch those with the whole business and stakeholder team. Yeah. That's maybe not the best approach.
No. And I also find that there's depending on the company, there might be less resistance to surveys than to interviews, and vice versa. So you sort of go with the one that's most likely to be accepted, and then see, what research question, of course, could we answer really using this. And I like to think that proper research quite quickly proves itself. If you do it well and you do the analysis well, you reap the rewards, and they will see it. But yeah, first you have to get in there and you have to do it. Yeah.
What has been the most surprising result for either you or the company you worked for, like last year doing user research? What's the most surprising insight?
Well, I have an example on this. There was this thing, there's a lot of company jargon, and suddenly on most major brands in eyewear that I've seen, this thing came up that they called, they called it in Italian a telecomando, which was basically an overview page of certain offers, and it popped up on every brand. But over the past few weeks, we prototyped some certain Cyber Week prototypes, and in every research, something came up with this page, and it didn't work. And I went back to all the teams and said, like, why is this live? One, why wasn't it tested in A/B tests? And why are we now discovering it's not working? So somewhere this thing sprouted on one side and everyone copied it over. And the biggest frustration now is that, oh yeah, but there must be something going well here, because every website has it. And that's one of the biggest pitfalls of not doing research in the beginning, or at least on one of those brands, could have already cured the other brands to not follow this example.
So basically that fault went viral.
Yeah.
Through the whole, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Viral in a wrong way.
Yeah, a lot of things that go viral.
Yeah.
Depends a bit. So, question.
Yes, thank you. Do you think the UX research can be democratized simply? Because we have lots of questions but limited resource on UX research. So I would like to democratize it more so that more people can get answers to their questions. Do you have any advice on that or any thoughts about that?
Good question. Do we need all those experts, or can we let the team handle it by themselves?
Well,
let's ask the experts. They won't be biased at all.
well, actually, I think there's for surveys specifically, there are a number of very good standard questions that you can ask on any product page or on any thank you page or on any exit survey during the funnel. There are great examples of those. So it's just a matter of following that and then setting it up. When it comes to doing interviews, I would say that's really a sort of it's a lot harder than you think it is. And some people have a talent for it and others do not.
It's really hard not to ask like guiding questions and
leading questions and putting your own bias into those questions, and not because if the business team, for example, comes to your client comes to you with like, we want to test this as basically validation of what they did, then your mind must start rattling like, okay, is the request actually valid, or is there something else that is the problem here? So always approach it from a user point of view is what I would do as a UX researcher, and not so much, the business needs are, it's the business, so there are some lines that you need to follow, but it's also a user-centric approach that you try to take on.
And I would like to maybe counter that with a question. Do we want to democratize data analysis? Yes, but can we?
That's the loophole.
Yeah, and that's the tricky bit with qualitative. There's only so much that you can automate, because, and that's why I started with the surveys. Surveys are easier to democratize because it's a one-way street when you're sending them out. It's two ways when you get the answers back, especially when it's open questions. But in an interview, in moderated user testing, there is this person, mm-hmm. and they are giving you input or looks or
non-verbal.
Indeed.
How do you call that?
Non-verbal communication.
Non-verbal signs. That one, yeah.
And how you respond to that is so important. And that's very hard to automate. So yeah.
Let's ponder on that one. Thank you so much, and give it up for Elsie and Orion. Next session in 10 minutes, we are going to discuss centralized versus decentralized teams with Annemarie and Arnoud. So be back in 9 minutes.